Blueprint is used throughout Unreal Engine 4, and in this video, we'll take a look at some of the different types of blueprints you'll be working with in your own projects. So here we are inside of the editor, and we have several different stands with all kinds of different blueprints that we're going to be looking at. Starting with our first stand here, 5.1, and the level blueprint. So essentially what we have is, if we play in the editor here, we have the ability to walk over and stand on this button, turning on these gears, and the light on the button comes on as soon as we step off, turns off, and so do the gears. So we've set this up inside of the level blueprint. So if we escape out of this play session here, to get to the level blueprint, as long as we're in the main editor viewport, across the top, our main toolbar, we can go to the blueprints button, and about midway down, we have the ability to open the level blueprint. Now the level blueprint is a level-specific graph that you can use to script level-specific functionality. We'll talk more about this in a moment. But for now, let's open the level blueprint. Inside the level blueprint, we have some script that's already been defined and being used to set up some of the other demo stations in this particular project. One of the things that you may notice about the level blueprint is that it doesn't have a components window, as we cannot add components to the level blueprint. Therefore, it doesn't have a viewport tab either. All it has is the event graph that we can use to script level-specific functionality. And what I mean by level-specific functionality is that anything that we do inside of this particular graph is going to be bound to the level that we do it in. So if we create a new level, we'll have a brand new level blueprint that will be completely empty. Let's take a look at the script that's being used to turn on our button. So here is our 5.1 script that we've commented out. We have a trigger box that is being used to determine when we overlap it. As soon as we do, turn on the button and also turn on the gears. As soon as we leave the volume of the trigger box, turn off the button and turn off the gears. And that's being done here inside of the level blueprint. So let's hop over to the other stand, the 5.2 stand, which is an actor blueprint, which looks very similar to the 5.1 stand. In fact, if we play inside the editor, it's going to do the exact same thing. We could step on the button, the gears turn on, and that turns off, just as we'd expect. But we've done this as an actor class blueprint. This may be a case where if you are doing something that you want to reuse in your level or use in multiple levels, you may want to use an actor class blueprint as it's more modular. Anything that we do inside of an actor class blueprint will be bound inside of the actor class that we do it in. What I mean by that is, select our blueprint here and we open it up. Here is all the script that is being used to determine how to turn on the gears and turn on the button. It's all done inside of this actual blueprint. We have the components window where we can add all the different bits and pieces that make up the blueprint, such as the button and the trigger box and the gears, etc. And that's all being done inside of this blueprint. And what's handy about that is that we can select this blueprint. We can drag out another copy of it, like so, making sure that it is flat on the ground, something like this. And if we play, we can walk over this button and those gears will turn on. We can just jump off of that and come onto this one and those will turn on. That's one of the benefits to using actor class blueprints, is that we can quickly and easily make duplicate versions of this inside of our level, and the scripted functionality would just work. If we were to do that inside of the level blueprint, try to copy this stuff out, we would need to, each time inside the level blueprint, provide that scripted functionality. And not only that, when we switch levels, we would lose all that functionality. So the level blueprint is primarily for level-specific things that you need to do, kicking off initial script potentially, but you're probably going to want to stick with actor class blueprints because it's a little bit more flexible and modular in that regard. So I'm going to hop over to the 5.3 stand, and we're going to take a look at animation blueprints now. If I play in the editor here, and I walk over to this button, we now take control of a character that we can actually walk around with and jump and do all kinds of fun stuff with. As soon as I go back over the button, we lose control, and there's our character just standing there. Let's take a look at an animation blueprint. So to do that, I'm going to select the character in the viewport here, and we're going to go to the details panel under animation class. We're going to browse to the animation blueprint that we are currently using. I'm going to click this icon here. It'll take me to the animation blueprint. As soon as I double click to open it up, it's going to look a little bit different. Let's go ahead and make sure that we are on the event graph, and let's maximize this so we can see it as well. It's a little bit different. This particular asset is used in the aid of creating animation logic for characters, whether you're controlling them or not. You could do that inside of an animation blueprint. The event graph of an animation blueprint is used to define the moment-to-moment variables, things that can change while your application is running, And once you update those variables, those can in turn be used to derive which animation pose your character would be in. Defining the animation poses is done on the anim graph. So if we open that up, here's our anim graph, and the anim graph has all kinds of different stuff in it that allows you to blend between different animations. Here we have the ability to set up a state machine, so we can be in different states, so we can be idling or running, jumping, etc. The anim graph basically allows you to define your moment-to-moment final animation pose, while the event graph, similar to an actor class blueprint, allows you to update your moment-to-moment variables at runtime. So I'm going to close this out, and we're going to move on to the next stand, which is 5.4. This is for creating UI elements in your project. So if I play in the editor here, as soon as we walk over to the button and stand on it, we have a little bit of a UI pop up in the upper left-hand corner of our screen, which says health and energy, and they look like they're depleting, so I better get off that button. And as soon as we step back on, it resets. This uses what we call Unreal Motion graphics inside of UE4 and what's called a widget blueprint. So let's take a look at what that looks like. To do that, we're going to have to actually go back to the level blueprint because I used the level blueprint to set this up for us. So I'm going to open the level blueprint first. We scroll up here. We have at the begin play, it's doing some stuff to store the player character's transform for the playable character. But to the right of that, we are creating a HUD. So if I click this browse icon, it should take us to it in the content browser. So let's go ahead and open that up. And this is a widget blueprint. So it looks a little bit different than some of the other blueprints we've been working with. It has a graph, which is called an event graph, which is very similar to some of the other event graphs that we've worked in. Right-clicking and holding will allow you to drag around in the viewport, as we've done before. But you can see it's a widget blueprint. So there's UI-specific things that we could do inside of this graph. Not to mention that it doesn't have a components panel or components window. It doesn't have a viewport. It has a designer tab. So this is where we can lay out visually how we want our UI elements to appear inside of our project. And we could do all kinds of things like doing animation for those, all kinds of different UI elements that we could add, buttons and checkboxes and all kinds of cool things that we can do inside of the designer tab. So let's close this out. And let's move on to the final stand in this particular video. This is not a new type of blueprint. It's still a actor class or whatever type of blueprint you base it on, but I wanted to illustrate why child blueprints are beneficial. So if I play in the editor here, we have a couple of different items that are kind of floating in the air. They're kind of your traditional pickups. As soon as I go over them, they kind of zoom in towards me and they print something in the upper left telling us what we've picked up. Let's take a look at how this was set up. If we go to the blueprints folder, and we have all of those assets here, but we have one called the parent. I'm going to go ahead and double click and open this up. Now, if I maximize this, this is just an actor class blueprint, similar to some of the other blueprints we've set up before, but all the logic is set up in here for what happens when we actually pick up the thing, how we get it to animate, etc. That's all done inside of this blueprint. Go to the viewport tab, we can see it has a mesh, has a trigger volume for us to enter, and a light. I'm going to close this out. We also have some other items here called child. If we open these up, script is a little bit different in here. But what's cool is that because we are basing this off of another class, we get to inherit all that functionality from the pickup blueprint. So all that functionality that's inside of here, we get all of this for free. We don't need to recreate that. This blueprint already knows what happens when we overlap that volume. It already knows how to animate the pickups. It already knows how to do all of that for us. We can come in here and script custom functionality that we want on a per pickup basis because it is a child. And in this case, all we're doing is saying, when we overlap it, go ahead and print something different for each one that we pick up. In this particular case, we picked up a cupcake. So that is a child class blueprint. And you can create child class blueprints by right-clicking on any blueprint and creating a child class from it. That will allow you to inherit all the functionality from the parent in your child blueprint, which is super handy. Depending on your background or interest, you may be working with all or just some of the blueprints we've covered. The key concept that they share, however, is that they all use node-based visual scripting to accomplish many of the same tasks that were once only available to programmers. So once you have the basics down, you should be able to experiment and create content within each type of blueprint.